my name is Randolph Love III. I think I overheard somebody say that Dr. Purcell and I sound the same. We talk the same. You can blame that man right there. That's our granddaddy. We talk country and proper at the same time. It's cropper, I guess you would call it. All right, so all truths are parallel, like I always share with people. Before you take in any information, before you do anything, before you eat, you need to know the source. A lot of people came here to Maggiano's because they knew the source. Maggiano's typically makes good food. Before you drink anything, you need to know the source. You need to know where it's coming from. You can't just have all types of pathogens and things in your water. The same when it comes to information. Whenever you're taking in information, there's so many gurus online nowadays. You need to know the source. Let me tell you the source of the information that I'm about to share with you. Like I said, my name is Randolph Love III. I'm a chartered financial consultant, chartered life underwriter, chartered property casualty underwriter, and fellow Life Management Institute. Somebody once told me, say, do you know you have more letters after your name than in your name? Yeah, the alphabet soup. One of my mentors, Doug Andrew, he calls it the alphabet soup. But all that means, it tells you that I took the time to study, read books, take standardized exams, and learn what I'm talking about. But let me ask you something. If you read a book about swimming for the past 5 years, but you never got in the water, do you know how to swim? No. You don't know. You have no idea, right? Let me tell you how I swim. I am a registered pre-licensing and continuing education provider with the Florida Department of Financial Services. I provide training and consulting to corporate, federal, and state, local governing agencies. I assist individuals and business owners with effective tax minimizing wealth strategies. I have over a decade in the industry with the financial services and insurance, over 15 years to be exact. And I am a partner and franchise consultant with the Franchise Consulting Company. If you want to know anything about expanding your business using the franchise distribution system, please let me know. But here's the disclaimer. I told you all the good stuff, but here's the disclaimer, everybody. This is information. I'm an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I almost slipped up. I am not an attorney. And this is information, not advice. I'm going to say this is information. You're going to say not advice. This is information. This is information. This is information. Y'all grew up in children's choir too? What is that, alto, soprano? Okay. Oh yeah, hey, the alto soprano just to get into it, isn't it? And the tennis, we just said watching. All right, so I'm going to start this off with a trivia question. All right? How can this be true? You have two married couples that both started their retirement with a $500,000 nest egg, right? And traditional advice tells you to withdraw 4%. You know, we're going to say go ahead and withdraw 5% with an average return of 6%. So if I'm only withdrawing 5 and I got an average return of 6, that should be good, right? It should be, right? And you have an inflation adjustment of 3% each year. On average, inflation, and if anybody doesn't know what the word inflation means, that's how much the cost of things costs. I remember they used to use milk. Every year they used to say the cost of milk has gone up such and such, right? And basically that's the simple way of gauging inflation. How much was milk this time last year? And whatever that percentage difference is how they used to calculate, the old school way, calculate inflation. But they're doing an inflation adjustment of 3%. So by the age of 78, two married couples both started out with the same amount, both withdrawing the same amount, both got that average return, but then one couple has negative $12,143 at 78, and the other couple has $1,132,964. Does anybody know how that's possible?
Texas.
Who said that? Oh, you're a prophetess. So I'm going to ask y'all, who's the worst business partner? What if I told you I wanted you to start a business? And when you start this business, I want you to put up your own money. I want you to work 12 hours a day. I want you to go out, go to the conventions, go to these networks, shake hands, kiss babies. I want you to do all that, and then when you're ready to retire and end the business, I won't have. No, as a matter of fact, I don't want half. I want to have the right to change how much you give me at any point in time. Would you take that business partner? The IRS. And look at this. A lot of us, what we end up doing is we roll over our traditional 401k from our job to our IRA, all right, our individual retirement account. But all the IRA is an IOU. Because let's break it down. John pulling out $25,200 a year. Mary pulling out $22,800 a year from her Social Security. John, you know, they rolled over that 401k to their IRA, pulling out $12,000 a year. Mary pulling out $8,000, $68,000. Hey, $68,000 for a retirement couple isn't bad, right? But what about federal taxes? And you know, we happen to live in a state where there's no state taxes, but what about state taxes? And then you mess around and get taxed on your Social Security. Did y'all know that in the Internal Revenue Code, Social Security is not supposed to get taxed?
That's right.
That's right. But a lot of people under the age of 60 don't know that based off of the way their money is structured, they're going to end up getting taxed on your Social Security. A lot of y'all don't even realize your Social Security can get taxed. But if your money is flowing the wrong way, you can get taxed on it. So here's the two different scenarios. We just showed you this scenario, but what if you can do this? What if you, John, still pulling out $25,200, Mary still pulling out $22,800, tax-free distribution, $12,000. Another tax-free distribution, $8,000. Zero in federal taxes, zero in state taxes, zero in Social Security. And instead of pulling out this $8,000 and get taxed for over $10,000 of it, you're able to keep all of it. Did y'all know that that's possible? It's possible. We perish due to lack of knowledge. And I'm about to give you some knowledge today, all right? If there's anybody here that still don't realize how troublesome taxes are, what if you took $1 and you doubled it 20 times? Does anybody know how much that'll equal? You doubled it 20 times. So meaning you take $1 and then it turns to $2, then you take $2 and it turns to $4, then you take $4 and you turn to $8, $8 to 16. If you did that 20 times, how much would that be? Over $1 million. $1,048,576. That's $1 doubled 20 times. Less than a month. But what happens when you just add just a 25% tax rate? That $1 million just dropped to $72,570.64. And a lot of y'all are doing very well for yourselves, and if you're not yet, you will be. What if you find yourselves inside a 33% tax bracket? That million just turned to $27,362.05. So I guess we agree that unnecessary taxes isn't a good thing? I'm going to show you how to avoid that. Would you like to pay the most impossible taxes or the least? If you want to pay the most, raise your hand. If you want to pay the least, raise your hand. Exactly. So I'm going to ask y'all another trivia question. In the future, are taxes likely to be lower, be the same, or be higher? Don't waste your time. I think the smart money is on higher. What goes up must go down. And if you actually sit down and spend time with the elders of your family, the matriarchs, the patriarchs, they'll tell you what traditional financial advisors tell you is a fallacy. What they tell you is when you retire, your taxes are going to be lower in retirement. But what you discover is your taxes are the same, if not more, in retirement. But now it means that money that they're taking means more to you because you're not bringing in as much. Quick question. All truths are parallel. My granddad is a farmer. Would you rather pay taxes on what it costs you for a handful of seeds or a field full of crops? Handful of seeds. And then when the crop grows, you get to collect it all. Now I'm about to show you, but before I teach y'all the tricks, I don't mind sharing knowledge, but I have to know who's in the room. Is there anyone here who doesn't like when other people find loopholes to legally avoid taxes? Is there anybody here that doesn't like when people find legal loopholes? You be wanting to know, and you don't. And here's the thing. The good thing about that is, would you rather be mad that they found it, or would you rather be happy that you learned how to do it too? I'm going to teach y'all. So this is how I'm going to teach y'all. Remember, all truths are parallel. What creative things can you do with baking soda? Now, before you answer, I grew up on the north side of Sherwood. They do other creative things with baking soda. I'm not talking about that. But what creative things can you do with baking soda? Anybody? You can clean. You can clean. You can deodorize. You can brush your teeth. It's a whitener. It has a lot. I mean, it's a mouthwash. It's a teeth whitener. It's a deodorant. It's a fridge odor deodorizer. It's an air freshener. It's a kitchen cleaner. Garbage odor eliminator. But when I ask people what creative things that you can do with baking soda, they never mention what it's made for. You can bake with baking soda. Think about what it is. Don't think about what it does. And the reason why I want you to think about what it is, don't think about what it does, because if I tell you that you can accomplish everything that I told you can accomplish, but you have to get life insurance, what you gonna say? Oh no, I don't need no life insurance. Oh no, I don't need no baking soda. I don't need to bake nothing, but you need to deodorize things. You need to clean things. You might not need life insurance for death benefit, but I bet you want to be able to get to your money within 1 to 3 days, tax-free. I bet you want your money to be safe. I bet you don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and have your principal drop 20, 30% overnight because it's in volatile markets. I bet you want to make sure that you're having a good, decent rate of return on your money. I bet you want your money to be tax-free. So if I told you life insurance was able to give you all that, what would y'all say? Would you still say I don't need life insurance? All right, I'm going to educate y'all, all right? Because here's the thing. I know I'm not the first person to tell you that wealthy people use life insurance in order to create wealth while they're alive and generational. I know I'm not the first person to tell you that, but I'm going to go ahead and break down. Trust me, most people, after they listen to me, they say, I've heard people say this hundreds of times. You're the first person to help it make sense. So here's how people's money is usually set up. People's money is usually set up like this. Majority of their money is a taxable full withdrawal, or they paying LIFO. Anybody ever heard of the term LIFO? LIFO means last in, first out. So what that means is you paid all these years into your qualified retirement account. You might have put hundreds of thousands of dollars in there, or probably nowhere near that much. Once you go to start pulling out the money, do you know that they're going to start taxing you from day one? Because they're taxing you based off of the last money that came in, not the first money that came in, right? This is how your money should be. At least 40% of your retirement income should be tax-free. And believe me, a majority of my customers are over the age of 50, but this conversation isn't just for people over the age of 50. When you learn this sooner than later, it can help you out. So do we all agree that you want everything to be tax-free? Yeah. All right, so here's the next thing. You want it to be protected against market losses. So I'm going to show y'all, I'm going to be comparing what I say versus traditional advising. So let me ask you something. If you had $100,000 and you earned 50%, how much did you just make? 50,000, because 50% of 100,000 is 50,000, and if you earn 50%, you earn 50,000, so that puts you at 150,000, all right? And then it drops 50%, and then it goes up 50%, and then it drops 50%. You just broke even, right? Yes? Who says no? Let me show you what really happened. Because a traditional advisor will show you that your money went up 50, went down 50, went up 50, went down 50, and they'll insist that you just broke even. But really and truly, if your money goes up 50%, you're at 150,000. What's 50% of 150,000? So if it went up 50, then it dropped 50, now you're at 75. And then if it goes up 50, now it's at 112,500. And if it drops 50, now you're at $56,250. Are you starting to see? So that first couple that had that negative 12,000, are y'all starting to see how fast their 500? It got ate up by taxes. Now it's getting eat up by market volatility. Over 4 years. If it goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. So y'all, these are real numbers. If you look up this, you can verify it. This is a stock market from the indexes, the S&P 500 stands for Standard & Poor's, from January 2000 to March 2020. If you had your money in the market, and before I just want to clarify one point before we get to this. So what does that mean, y'all? If money goes up 50% and down 50%, you didn't break even. And I'm going to make it easier. Let's say you got $100,000 in your account and it drops 50%. How much do you have now? 50,000. And then based off of what I just talked, y'all, if it goes up 50%, how much do you have now? 75,000. You just lost money, right? So what that really means is whatever you lose, you have to do double to break even. That means if you lose 50, you got to do 100 to break even. All right, I want to get that point clear. So let's look at the market, right? So in January 2000, it was at 8.97%. And then for the next 3 years, it did negative 2.4%, 17.25%, 24.29%. That total is 43,059%, right? 43.59%. So if somebody lost 40%, how much do they need to do to break even? 80. But guess what happened? Anybody know anybody that gambles? Yeah. You might be the one that does it. And what it is if you gamble, are you going to tell people about your losses? No, you're only going to talk about your wins, right? What happens in the stock market is right after all those losses, they just did 32.19%. So guess what somebody that had their money tied directly to the market is going to do? They're going to tell their friends and family. I just made 32% in the market. They didn't say nothing about these losses. Because remember, if it dropped 43%, they got to do at least 86% to break even. So look what happened over the next 4 years. If you add up the returns to the S&P over the next 4 years, it came to 54.34%, 57.34%. Did they break even yet, y'all? And before they got the chance to break even, the market dropped again. One of the things that people are going to tell you when you tell them that you have all of your serious money in life insurance is they're going to say this. Nah, when you put your money in life insurance, those indexes are capped at 11%. Yes, it's true. A lot of these indexes are capped at 11%. But guess what? In the years that the market was down, zero was your hero. Because when everybody lost money, you lost nothing. You didn't make nothing that year, but you lost nothing. And then boom, the next year come back. Now, you remember they had got that 32%? You only got 11%. But guess what? If both of y'all started at 100,000 and they lost 40%, they're at $60,000. And 30% of 60,000, that's only $18,000. 60,000 plus 18,000 is 78. If you had 100 and your money was in a properly structured life insurance policy, you were still at 100. So that next year, when they got 32 trying to break even, you got 111,000. It adds up. And if you started with 100,000 minus fees, and remember, you don't get taxed when your money is in life insurance, you would end up with $285,640.40. And that other person, now don't get me wrong, the person that had their money in the index after fees and taxes, they still were profitable over 20 years, but they only made approximately 50,000. Would you rather have 150,000 or would you rather have 285,000? 285. All right. So not only do you want it tax-free, not only do you want it protected from market losses, but you also want to be able to access your money, right? Right. A lot of y'all are putting money into a qualified retirement account, and you're probably 30, 40 years old? Do you know that you cannot touch that money without penalty until you're 59 and a half? And if it's a traditional account, then you got to pay taxes on it. Now, one thing that I'm going to tell you, I'm not a big fan of qualified retirement accounts, right? But if you do have a qualified retirement account, I highly recommend that you call your HR office and say, I want to switch my traditional 401k to a Roth 401k. Does anybody know the difference between traditional and Roth? Yes. You do. So traditional means you pay taxes on the crops. Roth means you pay taxes on the seeds. Y'all all just said it's better to pay taxes on seeds than crop, right? So is that truth different than the truth I just said? Yeah. So I recommend that you go ahead, if you're going to stay inside of a qualified retirement account and you have a 401k with your job, call your HR and say, I want to switch it to a Roth, all right? Now, a Roth still ain't great. A Roth still has restrictions. It still has limitations, but at least it's better than waiting to an unforeseen time in the future to pay some unknown taxes. So you want to be able to access your money. A lot of people have majority of their money in their house. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, with the cost of living, it's good to have a house that you know is paid off, and all you have to do is pay the property taxes, right? I wish you didn't have to do that, but it's better than paying these rent prices, right? But guess what? When you need the money the most, what if you just lost your job? What if you got $300,000 in equity and you just lost your job, and then you go to the bank and say, hey, I want to take out a HELOC? What do you think that bank gonna say? We need this, we need that, before we tell you no. Because yes, the money is technically there, but if you can't pay it back, they're not going to give it to you. And when it's an emergency, you need that money fast. Can you get to your equity within 1 to 3 days in most cases? No, you can't. So I'm about to show y'all this. Now, I recommend y'all take a picture of this screen real quick, because I'm going to, once I finish talking to y'all, I'm going to have y'all do some homework, okay? Get your phones out. Wait a minute. So this is how you figure out what the internal rate of return is. If you learn this right, a traditional financial advisor will never be able to trick you. A traditional financial advisor would never be able to trick you. What you do is you take the end value minus the beginning value, and that gives you the difference. And then you take the difference and divide it by the beginning value, and that lets you know what the internal rate of return is of any investment that you have. So I'm going to use some real numbers as an example. So the S&P 500 in February 2019 was $2,779.83. At the end, the very next year on the same day, the S&P 500 was $3,370.29. So if you do that math, if you take the ending value minus the beginning value, and you get that difference, and then you take that difference and divide it by the beginning value, that lets you know if you had your money directly in the market, you just earned 25.9%. That's not bad. If you had your money in an IUL, a max funded index universal life policy, remember I told you it's capped at 11% most times. So that person earned 25.9, but you only earned 11. You can't win them all, right? That very next month, the S&P was $2,808.48. And then the next year, the same day the following year, it was at $2,386.83. That was a loss. You just made 25.9%, but now you just lost money. Because when you do the math, that's negative 15%. If you lose 15, how much do you need to break even? 30. Y'all catching on? Y'all good. I have a smart audience. Say yes? Yes. But guess what? If you had your money in a properly structured max funded in that universal life, you lost nothing. Now you're starting to see, yes, I might not make as much as you, but because I don't lose anything, when the very next year comes around, I'm ahead while you're still trying to play catch up. Let's do it again. Using the same math. If you had your money in the S&P 500 February 2020 to 2021, you would have earned 16.75%. If you had an IUL, you only earned 11. Once again, you can't win them all. But even more crazier, because I'm about to tell you something. So we're about to get into the difference between the people who got a license and the people who really know what they're doing. Yes, I told you that majority of indexes are capped at 11%. Do you know that they have some uncapped indexes? Did y'all know that? There are life insurance policies that have uncapped indexes. Now, the reason why we don't tell you to put all of your money into an uncapped index is because usually there are participation rates involved. Usually you have to pay at least a 5% participation rate to be in these uncapped indexes. So that means in the years that you only made 8% and you got a 5% participation rate, it just cut your earnings down to 3%. We don't want that to happen, right? So what happens is when the market crashes, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, hey, the market just crashed. I'm moving all my money to an uncapped index. What are you going to do? What are y'all going to say if you smart? Y'all going to say, move my money, right? Because check this out. The person in the market just made 64.8% in 1 year, y'all. In 1 year, they just made 64.8%. But y'all remember, they didn't even break even yet, right? If you had your money in an uncapped index and a properly structured max funded index universal life policy, after subtracting the 5% participation rate, you would have made 59.8%. Let's call it 50% just to be easy math. What if you had $1 million in your properly structured index universal life policy and you just made 59%? That's almost $600,000 tax-free that you just made, because of the vehicle that you have it in. So, the way you get to your money, because a lot of people, did y'all know that in order to get to your money, you have to borrow it from your life policy? Borrow it. And borrowing is a scary word because we're so used to borrowing as consumers. But when you have your properly structured max funded index universal life set up the right way, you're no longer a consumer, you're a partner. Because this is how it works. And one more thing before I get into how it works. What if I told you that after the event tonight, you can come to me and you can borrow $1,000, but you don't have to pay it back till after you're dead? What would you say?
I want that house.
You would say, how many times can I do this?
Yes.
Yes, in order to get to your money in a properly structured life insurance policy, you have to borrow it. But you don't have to pay it back until you're... Is that borrowing for real? When it's structured the right way. All right, so let's see. Now, just imagine you had $1 million in accumulated cash value, and it grew 10%. So 10% of $1 million is $100,000, right? So if it goes up 10%, you're going to borrow $100,000 from your life insurance policy. And remember, you don't, all the money that you just borrowed, you don't got to pay back until you're dead. But why are you borrowing it? One of my mentors, Doug Andrew, he says there's 3 ways to get money out of a life insurance policy. The sad way, the dumb way, and the smart way. The sad way is you put up $100, you get $1 million life insurance policy, and then you get hit by a bus the next day. That's a good return on your investment, but it's a sad way to do it. The dumb way is you withdraw money from your life insurance policy. So a lot of people, they just withdraw it, or they surrender it. They say, oh, I can't do this anymore. They withdraw, they surrender. The reason why that's the dumb way to get money out of your policy is because now you just created a taxable event. You want to borrow from it. Because when you borrow from it, you might have got, when you borrowed money to buy your car, you might have got taxed on the car, but did you get taxed on the money that you borrowed? When you borrowed money to buy your home, you might have to pay property taxes, but did you get taxed for the money that you borrowed? You want to borrow it in order for it to be considered borrowed money, and that way it's not considered income, and that way when you get the money, it doesn't affect your Social Security, because according to them, you're not getting any income, you're just borrowing money. So, when you take out that $100,000 policy loan, that just dropped your available cash down to $1 million again, right? But your accumulated value is still $1,100,000. So what just happened was when you borrowed money out of your policy, you didn't actually borrow that money. You used that money as leverage to borrow other people's money. I like to call it twin babies. Who doesn't like twin babies? Huh? Depending on you got support, right? Who doesn't like twin babies? What if you can have money, making money in the digital world, but also have the money in real life? Because what happens is, even though you borrowed out that $100,000, your $100,000 is still in your life insurance policy earning money, because technically it's still in there, right? And then it grows again. The very next year, you just got you got another 10%. So that puts you at an accumulated value of $1,210,000. And then you borrow it again. Now you get charged approximately, let's say you get charged 4.5% interest. If I told you you didn't have to pay this interest back till after you're dead, is it really still interest? So if you don't got to pay the loan back until after you're dead, if you don't got to pay the interest back till after you're dead, and it's not considered income, why not do it? Now, here's, what would you say? Come on. Now, here's one of the differences, because I'm about to, a lot of you probably already have life insurance policies. Some of you probably have whole life, and I'm going to explain the difference. Yes, you don't have to, whenever you borrow against a whole life policy and whenever you borrow against an IUL, you don't have to pay the money back until after you're dead, and you're going to get charged the interest rate. One of the main differences between a whole life policy and a properly structured index universal life policy is you get credited what they charge you, the interest they charge you. Yeah, you know. Because what ends up happening is, let's say they charge you 4.5%, they're going to ask you, hey, we're going to credit you 4.5%. Do you want this to be a wash loan, or do you want us to use this money to buy upside options? And if you don't know what upside options is, it's when you put money, say, hey, I want to have the option to buy this at 50, let's say it's a stock. I want to have the option to buy this at $50 a share, no matter what happens. So by this time next year, if it's $150, I still want to be able to buy it at $50. But let's say the market crashes. What if it's worth less than 50 now? Are you going to exercise that option? No. Because guess what? Either way, it was free money that generated because you borrowed money that you didn't have to pay back to after you dead. If the market crashes, y'all keep it. But if it goes up, you get to keep the extra butter on top of the earnings that you get in that properly structured life insurance policy. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, I don't get it. Why is the government going to let me earn all of this money tax-free? And it's because of Internal Revenue Code 72E, 7702, and 101A. It says, 72E says, as long as it's considered a life insurance policy, it grows tax deferred. 7702 says, as long as it's considered a life insurance policy and you access it correctly, you can get it tax-free. And 101A says, as long as it's considered a life insurance policy, when you die, whatever money that you had in there is going to blossom to a larger number and pass to your heirs tax-free. In 1980, E.F. Hutton was one of the first brokerages to bring life insurance to the masses. Now, the wealthy families have been doing this since the 1800s. E.F. Hutton was the first company that said, we're going to bring this to the masses. And what happened was there was a run on the bank. You had people pulling out $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, and then putting it into life insurance policy. And they'll have a $2 million premium and have a $2 million death benefit and say, hey, this is life insurance. And because it's life insurance and I'm following these internal revenue codes, then you can't tax me. E.F. Hutton got sued by the IRS and the IRS lost. And when they lost, you know, whenever the IRS loses, you got to change the rules, right? So they wasn't going to take this away completely because so many wealthy families was using it. So what they came up with over the next few years was TAMRA, TEFRA, and DEFRA. And I know what you're thinking. And no, TAMRA, TEFRA, and DEFRA is not the name of the supporting cast from beloved 90s sitcom Moesha. Y'all remember Moesha, Kimberly, TAMRA, TEFRA, DEFRA? Hakeem, Miles. We got a lot of shenanigans. Now, TAMRA and TEFRA and DEFRA are the rules that you have to follow in order for your policy to still be considered a life insurance policy, still keep all of those benefits. I have a lot of real estate investors in here, right? What if I told you you bought a 5-story building and you still paying the same mortgage, you still paying the same property taxes, but you can only rent out 1 story a year. You can only rent out 1 story a year. Same mortgage, same property taxes, but you can only rent out 1 story a year. Would y'all do that? Let me explain it to you. Let me add a little bit to it. If you do that, and you only rent out 1 story a year, so the first year you only rent out the first floor. The second year you only rent out the second floor, the first and the second floor. The third year you rent out the first, second, and third floor. And then when you get to year 5, you can rent out all. And then after you do that, you never have to pay any taxes or any mortgage again. Would y'all do it? A life insurance policy is the most expensive in the first 5 years. If you believe that you're going to be alive for at least for more than 5 years, a life insurance policy is where your serious money should be. But it's expensive the first 5 years. The way they trick you is they show you how inexpensive it is to get these other types of policies started, and it ends up costing you millions in the future. If you're willing to pay slowly, follow the rules of TAMRA, TEFRA, and DEFRA so that it doesn't become a MEC, a modified endowment contract, then you can win. Now, some of you have whole life policies, and listen, I'm not going to hate on that, but I just want you to know the difference between a whole life and a properly structured index universal life policy. What they tell you is the benefits of a whole life policy is you have a 2% floor and a no-lapse guarantee. Does anybody know what a no-lapse guarantee means when you talk about a whole life policy? What it means is it won't lapse as long as you keep paying the premiums. Because what it is they're saying if the cash value gets very low, down to 0, we'll keep the policy going as long as you keep paying the premiums. If your cash value is 0, that means you have no money in it. That means you have no life benefits in it. But as long as you keep paying our premium, we won't lapse it. And it's a 2% floor. What they're saying is, in the years that the market is down, you remember how IUL 0 was your hero? They're saying, hey, we'll still give you 2%. But guess what? On average, out of 10 years, only 3 out of every 10 years the market is down. On average, every 10 years, 7 years, the market is up. So in order to save 2% for 3 years, you just lost all of that extra money. But let me tell y'all, it's not your fault. Y'all got bankers, right? Y'all got financial advisors. Y'all got insurance agents. And they didn't tell you this. It's only 2 reasons that they didn't tell you this. Either they don't know or they didn't care to tell you. Which one do you want it to be? Do you want an advisor that doesn't know or one that doesn't care to tell you? Neither one. So I told y'all all this to let y'all know there's still hope. Is anybody ever heard of a 1035 exchange? Now, a lot of people have heard of a 1031 exchange in real estate. Like when you buy, when you sell a property, you take a profit, you move it over to a new property, and you save money. But a 1035 exchange, this is how it works. Let's say you have an IUL or a VUL, a term life policy, a whole life policy. It don't matter what you have, and you don't feel like it was structured correctly. You can come to me. You can show me your policy, and I put together a policy. And the way a 1035 exchange works is I have to show your current insurance carrier, and they have to agree that my policy is better. And once they agree, that's when I can switch it to a properly structured, earning money for real. Because remember I told y'all to take a picture of that screen? What you want to do, this is how you're going to find out if your policy is working. Take the beginning value, which is your premiums, and subtract that from the ending value, which is your available cash value, and that'll be the difference. You divide that by the premiums, and then you will know what your internal rate of return. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of you are going to discover your real internal rate of return is less than 3%. If you have a typically structured policy, and it's going to be less than 3%. And if it's less than 3%, you need to call me. Or if you want me to do the math for you and show you, call me. I'll help you out. And I'm gonna end with this, y'all. Anybody ever heard the word idiot, imbecile, or moron? You hear it all the time? Love yourself. Well, without using your phones, without looking on Google, what does an idiot mean? Dumb? Anybody else? Ignorant. She about to say stupid? Ignorant? All right, what about imbecile? Weird. Huh? What about moron? When I was younger, my granddaddy used to tell me this. He used to tell me that an idiot was anybody that had the mental capacity of someone from the age of 0 to 3. An imbecile was somebody that had the mental capacity of somebody from the age of 3 to 7. And a moron was somebody that had the mental capacity of somewhere from 7 to 13. As I got older, I like words, and then I went ahead and looked up the definition of idiot. And like he said, the modern day definition of idiot is a stupid person. But does anybody know what the origin of idiot is? The origin of the word idiot ultimately comes from the Greek noun idiotes, which means a private person. Did y'all know that an idiot was somebody who kept things private? They didn't work with people? Imagine some of y'all are going to take this information and you're going to try to do it on your own. You're going to try to keep it private. All right? And then I said, hold up. So hold up. He told me that an idiot was 0 to 3, an imbecile was 3 to 7, and a moron was 7 to 13. So what does imbecile mean? And I looked it up. And yes, the modern day definition of imbecile is a stupid person. But then I looked up the origin. It's a person without supporting staff. So some of y'all are gonna keep everything private, and you're gonna do this without support. And some people might call you an... All right, now that I taught y'all this, I'm gonna ask y'all a trick question. What do you think moron means? No scruples? Mm-hmm.
Idiotic.
That's good. Nah, a moron just means you're a fool. Right? Yeah, but I said all that to say this. Think about what it developed to. Words aren't an accident, y'all. Think about what it developed to. That's the origin of the word. And it's telling you that if you keep things private and don't work with a supporting staff, you might as well be an idiot. You might as well be an imbecile. Because guess what? Now that I taught y'all this, all right, well, let me ask you, did anybody learn anything that they didn't know before tonight?
Yeah.
So some of y'all got cousins that got life insurance policies. Some life insurance licenses. Some of y'all got uncles, aunties, everything with life insurance licenses. What do they call a medical student that graduates at the bottom of their class? Doctor. The same thing they call the person who graduated at the top of the class. So just because somebody has a license doesn't mean they know what they're doing. A life insurance policy is just a tool. Would you rather have Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson's golf clubs, or would you rather have their swing? Would you rather have Michael Jordan's tennis shoes, or would you rather have his ability to take off from the free throw line, his fadeaway? It's the skill, not the tools.
Right.
Anybody ever seen the Chrysler 300?
Yes.
It's a beautiful car.
Yes.
My sister used to get them. It's a gorgeous car. I remember growing up on the north side, whenever a Chrysler 300 came, we would stop what we're doing and we would watch the car go by and we're like, look at that car. It looks just like a Bentley. It looks just like a Bentley. Like, that's what we used to do. All conversations would stop and we would watch the Chrysler 300. A time before the internet. Until one day I grew up. And I was walking in this parking lot, and not only did I see a Chrysler 300 and a Bentley parked right next to each other, they were both the same color, and they were both back then. And it was at that very moment that I said a Chrysler 300 looks nothing like a Bentley. A lot of y'all have people that have licenses. A lot of y'all have people that have access to these tools, but they don't know what they're doing. If I just taught you something that you've been trying to learn for years, don't think you can go to somebody with a license and they're going to do it for you. No, you need to go to somebody with not just a license, but to skills. Because, hey, a Chrysler 300 is a beautiful car. It has good lines. It looks good. It has good leather inside. And it'll get you from A to B. But wouldn't you rather be in a Bentley? My name is Randolph Love. I want to appreciate your time. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you. If you want to set an appointment with me, please scan. I love to meet every one of y'all.